name's Mark. The topic tonight is hamstrings and should we be stretching them. This is part 1 of 2. The second is on the 29th at the same time. I need to explain that the video that we're going to show and share with you was taken from the Southwest Endurance Network conference in 2018. There are some very good videos coming out of this conference, and most of them available on the Athletic Hub. Before I play the video, I should warn you that there is an optional practical content to it. So all you will need is a chair and a place to be able to stick your leg out in front of you. Might be quite fun to have a little bit of feedback on that when we get through it. I hope that you're all happy sitting comfortably. After the video, we will take some questions around that of the video and other conditions that you might be trying to get over in lockdown. So I hope you all enjoyed the presentation, and I'll try and get it to run. One moment, please.
Hamstrings and should we be stretching them? There's not much on a day-to-day basis that I can do to actually know what's going on with an injury or how it's repairing. When you get up into the rarefied worlds of like the Formula 1 I was working in, or Premiership football and stuff like that, then those guys would tend to get MRI scans, ultrasound, CT, whatever it is, almost as soon as they get injured. And that's more a product of just how much these guys are valued, how much they're paid, and how quickly they want to get them back into their competition the following week. It's not necessarily that they're going to get a great diagnosis out of this. And it could cause problems in itself. So the Aspetar Sports Medicine Hospital, basically in Qatar, and see a lot of elite athletes, certainly a lot of elite footballers. With some of the hamstring stuff, so their clinicians were diagnosing with their own clinical skills acute hamstring strains. When they then follow those up with an MRI scan, 20% of those were actually negative. So the clinician's saying it's a hamstring strain, the MRI scan saying it's not, the technology saying it's negative. So that can obviously cause problems with the clinician. He can start to question himself, is he wrong 20% of the time and the MRI is right 100% of the time, or is it vice versa? From the athlete's point of view, it becomes an issue because particularly at this sort of level, they've probably got their personal sports med doctor or their physio who they're trusting. They've been led to believe that they should be trusting the tech, particularly MRI, because it's supposed to be the gold standard and the latest and greatest. But the MRI is saying one thing, their practitioner is saying something else. So now psychologically they're like, well, who do I believe? What's my treatment plan? What's my training program? What's my rehab? Where do I go from this? So it can cause problems with the tech if you get it in too early. This next lot here, this is a systematic review, so that's looking at all the available papers on a particular subject and kind of trying to pick out the best conclusions out of all of them. This was in Achilles tendons, AT Achilles tendons, and this was specifically in runners, and it was only last year, so it's about the most up-to-date one I could find. And this is ultrasound rather than MRI. So tendon abnormalities are not always associated with a patient's pain. So they're seeing what they are suggesting are abnormal tendons on the scan, but there's really no pain in the athlete who's presenting with it. The next one, up to 90%, so 9 out of 10 tendons on ultrasound evidence show pathological change, but are completely asymptomatic. So that's no pain, no dysfunction, nothing wrong with them. But 9 out of 10 of them are showing changes on the scan. And this is supposed to be the stuff we're trusting in technology for what I do anyway, in injury rehab on a day-to-day basis. And the last one I picked out there was a list of these, is you get similar pathological changes may be found in both asymptomatic and symptomatic. So you get someone presenting in pain and dysfunction, and you scan them and they've got changes, that's what you'd expect. But you also find exactly the same changes on someone who's got no pain, no dysfunction. Summary of that was, despite the important functional role of the Achilles tendon, the clinical significance of an abnormal ultrasound in runners is unclear. So it's almost like, is there even any point having it at that point? And this isn't just in Achilles tendons and runners. If you do rotator cuff tendons in swimmers, you get exactly the same thing. You see pathological changes, you see enlarged tendons. We even see it if you scan somebody literally as they come out of the pool, you'll see a change in their tendon from after the swim session to before the session. If you do it in footballers, you'll see adductor tendon changes. Same thing again. It's just overuse in those things. It's just structural changes according to what they're doing. So typically, obviously, the runners are going to have structural changes in their Achilles, the swimmers in their rotator cuff, the footballers in their AD adductor tendons from all their changes around. So we're probably just structural adaptations to these changes. We think that's probably what's all that's going on. So from a tech point of view, if I could kind of have a dream piece of kit, I don't know what it would look like, would be something where I could actually visualise the soft tissue that, let's say in this one it's going to be hamstrings, so the soft tissue that's been injured. Can I somehow scan it or see it or test it or do something to it that's telling me how it's repairing? So can I see on probably not a daily basis, but maybe a weekly basis or a monthly basis, is it going through that repair phase? Where is it in the repair phase? What can I do in terms of a rehab program? How do I load it? And then if I load it and then I scan it again, for want of a better term, can I see that my loading protocol is working and it's repairing better? Or have I loaded it too much, or have I loaded it too little? At the moment, that doesn't really exist. Certainly, I'm sure there are sonographers, there's none here, hopefully, who would talk about this one, the ultrasound characterisation of Achilles tendons. That's what that's supposed to be able to do. But we know if you've got someone who's had an Achilles issue and we've rehabbed them and we've got them back to their running, maybe even back to their PBs, and then you scan their tendon still looks horrible, but they're functioning fine. So the scan isn't really telling us what's happening with tissue repair all the way through. So we have to be really careful when we're using the tech that's available at the moment, certainly on a day-to-day level, and for you guys trackside almost impossible, to actually know what's going on with rehab. So we're still kind of just down to the hands-on and the functional testing and the video analysis, all these different things that we can play around with, but nothing that's really going to show us right down, not at a cellular level, but certainly at a soft tissue level, what we can do or what's going on. My first kind of thoughts, so if that's what you're telling me, is it an injury? If it's an endurance group of people like it is today, I already know that the highest risk for hamstring strains come from high-speed running, high-speed changes of direction, so think football, hockey, and not necessarily high speed, but sports that involve muscles at their extreme end of range. So that could be dance, it could be gymnastics. I imagine, as endurance runners, you're not really getting into those positions too much. So if that's not happening in your competitive side of your sport, is it happening in training? As coaches here, are you giving them something that might be putting their hamstrings under strain? So are you running them up and down stairs? Are you doing lots of hill repeats? Are you doing sprinting? Are you doing lots of fast walkovers? I don't know, anything that could be taking them into end ranges of hamstring function. Or could it be high-speed stuff? And from what they originally say to me, if they keep trying the same thing over and over again, they're not getting anywhere. You've got to try something different. It's the definition of madness, isn't it? Keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. It's clearly not going to happen. So we have to try and figure out why you keep stretching, it's not getting better. So are your hamstrings getting on your nerves? So the typical presentation, once someone's actually come out of the pub and they've actually come to see me, it's often actually not hamstrings at all. It's normally my low back hurts. I've got calf tightness, I've got glute pain, I've got pins and needles, all these different things. So immediately I'm starting to think, well, they're not describing a hamstring injury to me, they're describing something else. Sometimes it's just they've been to yoga or they've been to Pilates for their bare back or something, and the teacher there or the instructor has said, your hamstrings are tight, do more stretching. Because that's always the answer, do more stretching all the time. What I'm going to do is see if any of you lot are tight. From a neurological point of view. So what's going on here, I'll do a little bit of it first, and then I'll get you through bit by bit as well. So I'm sure some of you have done this, and Mike would do this as a test as well, which is called the slump test, and it's a neurological test, but it comes out of sometimes hamstrings. It can pick up all sorts of things depending on what's going on. The idea is you sit up really tall first. Don't have to do this straight off, let me do it first. So sitting tall first, it's about the spine first, so you're going to slump chin right down on the chest, so it's cervical hyperflexion. Then you're going to roll the spine down, keeping the pelvis fairly straight. You're going to roll forward as far as you can. When you can't flex any further, pull your toes up, dorsiflex the ankle, and then you're in slow motion, you're going to slowly start to extend the knee. Okay? All we're looking for in terms of tension, and I don't care where you feel that tension at the moment, is a 1 or 2 out of 10. It's not a stretch. Okay? When you're stretching your hamstrings or something and you're warmed up, you might be up in a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 if you're really going for it. This is, if I'm sitting here now and this is 0, I've got no tension in my body at all, and I start to get a little bit of tension, that's it. Just stop at that point, remember where you felt it. Okay? So, all have a nice sit up, drop your chin on your chest, flex that chin right down, flex the cervical spine, start slumping your upper body until basically you can't slump your spine anymore. Choose a leg, doesn't matter which one. Dorsiflex one ankle as far as you can, and then in slow motion, don't kick it out fast. Super slow, start straightening that knee out and monitor, do you feel any tension anywhere? On this last one now, sorry, so now you've had a look at practice, and it might change obviously, Then you can sit down, you do a couple of repetitions, everything gets better after the first couple of reps. So exactly the same thing. You're all the way down there, you've come up, you've monitored where it is, stop when you get that 1 or 2, don't move anything else, just lift your neck up, nothing else. You stay slumped, the knee and the ankle stay the same as well. Just try it again. So when you feel that little bit of tension, just the neck comes up, not the rest of the spine. Monitor what happens, if anything at all. If you're trying to stretch a muscle, in theory, you should feel it in the belly of the muscle. Yeah? You're likely to feel it distal and proximal as well, but in an ideal world, if you're stretching your hamstrings, you feel it in the middle of your hamstrings. Did the tension change when you lifted your head up?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Cool. Right. So most of you are positive. For adverse neural tension, specifically in this case on the sciatic nerve. So what you were feeling wasn't the hamstring stretch. Okay? It was tension somewhere in the nervous system. Yeah? And clearly we know your neck's not attached to your hamstrings in any way. So those of you that felt tension were thinking, is that my hamstring? And you lift your head up and it went away. We didn't change your hamstring length, did we? But the tension went away. So it can't be your hamstrings. Yeah? So a little bit of anatomy. So the back of the spine's been taken off, that little spinous process has been cut away. So you can see the spinal cord, you can see all the pairs of nerves coming out. You can see down here, this is them all coming in to become the sciatic nerve. And the muscles of the glutes and the hamstrings have sort of been ghosted or transparent over that picture a little bit, just so you can see where they are. This is the test you were doing. This is your red line from the base of the brain all the way down through, up. So your sciatic nerve somewhere from around here, the bottom of the spine and the sacrum. The idea being your central nervous system, so the spinal cord, your peripheral nervous system, in this case the sciatic nerve ganglion down your legs, is all continuous. So what you do to your peripheral nervous system down here will have an effect up that way, or you move your head up that way, that will have an effect down this way. Yeah? So it's one continuous system, so it's not your left sciatic nerve or your right sciatic nerve or whatever it is, it's all one part of the system. And your nervous system should be able to do that full movement. It should be able to glide and slide through the body without any compression on it. And if you think, I know, someone going over hurdles, that's pretty much that position, isn't it? Obviously the other leg would be back there somewhere. So your body should be able to do that without any tension on it at all. What tends to happen is exactly what you guys felt, that somewhere along the line there's compression on that nerve. Either something's pressing on it, or it's irritating it, or there's adhesions, or all these different words which we tend to use in kind of rehab and sports massage, and we're not, to be fair, not really sure what they mean. But it can push on or press on the nerve, or it can pull on the nerve, or there can be tension within the nervous system somewhere that's preventing you getting to that position. Okay, that's all it means. Unfortunately, with the sciatic nerve, as soon as you get that, what it feels like is a hamstring tightness. So what do? You stretch it. What's the stretch do? Puts more tension on it. So you stretch it, and you're just going round and round and round in circles the whole time. All you see is a massage therapist, and it's not deep enough, so you get someone to do it a bit harder. And you just keep going round and round in circles, and that's why you get that, I keep stretching, it's not getting any better. Because you keep doing the same thing, you keep annoying it, you keep irritating it. Typically your body's response from a muscular point of view is to put things in spasm, because it wants to stop you doing this. It wants you to get, like, bend your knee, relax your ankle, get rid of this hip flexion. You're annoying my nerve, you're getting on my nerves. So it just keeps going around, you've got to somehow try and release that. So in terms of impeding the nerve, the excessive nerve stretch would be what you did. That's an excessive nerve stretch for you guys. For an elite hurdler, hopefully it wouldn't be an excessive nerve stretch, they could do it. Reduced nerve mobility is where there's something compressing, this is what I've already been talking about. It can be muscle spasm, particularly deep in the glutes, that's why we had that picture there with the anatomy one. It could be nothing to do with the muscle system, it could be coming from the lumbar spine or sacrum, it could be an old hamstring tear where you've got some scar tissue in there. It might be a more recent one where you've had some bleeding, where there's been some bruising in the muscle tear, and that can irritate the nerve. It can irritate it acutely from a chemical side, but that bleeding could also become scar tissue as well. So there's lots of reasons why this might go on, and we're going to obviously play around at a relatively low level of stuff you can do trackside, but if you even if you get into all this sort of stuff and it's still not going away, then obviously that's when you refer on, particularly if someone is talking about back pain and stuff as well. Because the last thing you want to do is keep winding someone's nerves up and keep trying to work on it if they're systematic for nerve pain. This is the role in new attention hamstring flexibility. It's a relatively recent one in terms of research. So what they did, this is an isokinetic dynamometer. You've seen these, where they do muscle and joint testing on a computerized system. So basically he's kind of set up in a knee extension position. They've got him sitting upright, but they've put him in quite a lot of hip flexion in there to try and basically wind his nerves up at the gluteal end as much as they possibly can. And they've adjusted his knee extension from 100 degrees, 80, 60, 40. and they're looking at his range of motion. So the difference being, so actually he looked pretty slumped there. That was supposed to be him sitting upright, which is pretty awful. But the opposite to that was they had him do what you were doing. So exactly the same, without changing anything, they just slumped right down, full cervical flexion, and it dropped his range of motion by 8% straight away, immediately doing that. What was also interesting, his resistance to stretch. So the machine can actually measure how hard it's trying to extend his knee out. That increased by 15% when he was in a slump. So just the effort of just trying to straighten his knee out was 15% harder when he dropped his chin than it was when he sat upright. So it's not just about stretch, it's about effort as well, how much effort you're having to make on these things. He there was then looking at rugby players, I think it was about 40 of them or so in this, and I wasn't going to talk particularly about strength, but it comes into it as well. So it's exactly the same thing, same piece of kit, but he had 35, 40 rugby players on it. And what he also found was when they got up to this 40 degree knee extension, knee flexion movement, that they were 16% weaker at that point. Now, to try and get a 60% strength increase in your guys through weight training, or strength training, S&C, whatever you want to call it, that would take a while. We could sort out this nerve issue probably fairly quickly, and you get a 16% strength increase, just like that.
Back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. As Jerry alluded to, he comes from, amongst many other career paths, McLaren F1, where he built the fitness facility for drivers and human performance lab. So there we go. Any of you try the slump test? Did it work? Did you feel anything? Could you then ask the question, can posture affect power output? I think you'll see from just that very basic effort of having your head too low, your chin on your chest, is going to have some effects. So Helen, I'm quite happy at the moment to take some questions. One thing I think I ought to say at the moment is that if, as Jerry alluded to, we're going to send people to further rehab, make sure you're sending them to the right people, i.e. A qualified osteopath might be a very good place to go. And if you need any recommendations, I can certainly give you one based in the Southwest. Okay, so has anybody got any questions in around that, or conditioning in lockdown, which we all are? Do you have any recommendations for lockdown? Yeah, I would actually use it as a chance to screen yourself if you are an athlete, or if you are a coach and you have got athletes, get them to do some basic screens and send you some videos, because then you can work on things. Some basic screens I might ask people to do would be a squat pattern, and progress that to an overhead squat. I would certainly ask them to lunge, and you could have a look at that as a pattern and start to look at lunge variants on that. A sublime hamstring stretch, and we've been talking about hamstrings, and that's lying on your back and raising, flattening out and raising your leg, keeping in dorsiflex and seeing a little bit of measurement on how things are going on. Feed that back to your coach, and then you can start to talk about, well, we can obviously see some stiffness here, a little bit of immobility there. Why don't we start working on some self-myofascial release, and that you can do at home? You don't need to go and see a physio, you can do it yourself. All you would need is a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball, a band, maybe a medicine ball, and away you go. So are we saying, Graham Chapman, sorry, Hello, Graham. So are we saying stretching hamstrings is a bad idea? If not, what conditions? No, we're saying that hamstring stretching is a good idea. We should stretch them, but sometimes when we feel what we think might be a tight hamstring, that might not be it. So a good stretching regime that you would have pre and post session, excellent, do it. But when you have athletes coming back to you saying, oh, my hamstrings are tight, it might not be the hamstrings that are tight, and that's what we're talking about. Would you recommend, Emma, hi, would you recommend using an app to video the stretches as well as the session when lockdown is lifted? Yeah, I would certainly video. Um, it's really good to show an athlete what they look like. You say, why didn't you use your arms? And if you can just show them their arm movement, or their leg cadence, or their foot strike, well, it works really well. I don't think it necessarily has to be a specific app. There is some work being done on these webinars that Helen Clitheroe is running, which is all about video analysis. So you might want to log on to that one, Emma, if you want a little bit more detail, but definitely you would want to video your athletes. Vincent, hi, good evening. Does it impact on taller people, long limb, different to shorter athletes? I think it's a good question, and I don't think there's a finite answer. I think it's around power output. Long limbed athletes that are fast have some issues they have to sort themselves out with. I think I come back to the word posture. If you look at how your athlete carries themselves, you will probably be able to see how that athlete and where that athlete has got restrictions, and where you might have to make some interventions, help them with, again, you use the word self-myofascial release, so they can do it at home, pre and post session. Ian, could you just explain a little bit more what you are talking about here? Paul Smith, hi. Well, yeah, well, yes, but I would do that for the whole group anyway. I would say, are you happy? If we use some video, it's not that you're going to publish the video usage, we're just going to show them what it is. It would be a standard procedure. I think most people do that anyway. I hope they do. Hello, Jim. I've seen some of your work you've done, and the real answer to the question is no. But the micro stretching I've seen has had some good results. I guess that's something we could allude to in another time. But yeah, I haven't used it. No, is the real answer, Jim. I think I'd rather use, Ian, again. I'd rather use the word condition. Piriformis pain, if I could say it, sorry, piriformis pain that feels that is linked to the hamstring. Should you stretch it? I think you need to look at the whole area in and around that hip and going down to the back of the area where those longitudinal muscles and tendons live, going down towards your knee. Stretch it. Maybe. Again, what do you mean by stretch? Certainly mobilize it. I would certainly use a roller, balls, make sure it's nice and warm. Should you stretch it? Depends on whether you're getting any results. And as Jerry alluded to, why keep stretching something if you're not getting any result to it? So if you weren't getting result, I might then take on something else. Are there any particular ailments you would expect to be more common now with everyone spending more time sat at home? Dave. Hello, Dave. Let's just go through that question again. Are there any particular ailments you expect to be more common now with everybody spending more time sat at home? Well, you might say a lot of people might have some back pain, postural pain, slumped in front of the television. I hope not. You might find that would you call a dietary an ailment? You might find people are not quite eating the right stuff, but I would say I'm lucky. I live in a very rural area, so I can get out a lot. Though I think that if you were in a small confined area, that there might be some niggles, and again, physical niggles that you're finding because you're just not getting the exercise that you were. So by having a really good regime at home that you could do of mobilization, of rolling, using medicine balls, etc. Yeah, I would. I would ask you, Dexter, when you are stretching. So what is the result you're looking for? If the result you're looking for is a greater range of mobility, when are you stretching and what are you doing? Again, I go back to the fact that why can't you use a roller, a medicine ball, a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball? And the other options are, as we've alluded to, you might have to seek somebody who you trust and know who could help you, maybe an osteopath, maybe a decent, a good soft tissue man or a lady, or a chartered physiotherapist. But I think I go back to the part one of your question is why, if your stretching is not working, what is not working, which bit is not working, and start to look at that. I think you'll probably find that there's a lot of tightness. So if you go to books like the Supple Leopard, etc., which will walk you through how to mobilize, you could do an awful lot actually in lockdown now. Whoa, which books would you recommend? General books or books in total? Let me give you a couple of books then. I would, I'll hold one up. Oh, it's a big one. Becoming a Supple Leopard. Because as in the back, and I'll try and open it up, lots of pictures of what you can do at home. I would certainly go for that one. I would also go for Dave Sunderland's books. Have I got one? Here, there. High performance long distance running, because it's got everything in it. It's a really good book to go to. And if you want to study a little bit more about release, there's two books that I would recommend. One is this one on, fascia. And finally, there is an ebook by a gentleman called Roberts, which you can Google, which comes out as a PDF document on, it's just called Roberts Self-Myofascial Release. So apart from the library that you can probably see behind me, where there's hundreds of books, those would be the 3 or 4 books I would go for at the moment. Nigel, hello. Following a lactic speed session, would you recommend static hamstring stretches or ensure there is mobility for tension release? I think I'd go for a little bit of both. I would say certainly after the um, the session, you're nice and mobile. So you would use some more mobile stretches, but at that stage you can introduce the more static stretches, but remembering that your tendons and muscles are all now nice and loose. So you want to make sure that when you are stretching them, you have got them in the right position, because it could be very easy to stretch them in a position that just doesn't work. Or is crooked, so lining people up straight. If you want to fire me an email, you're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Helen, for the support in the background. Really appreciate it. Nice to see you all, which I can't, but I can see you typing. Keep safe, and that's the one. And look forward to seeing you on, wait for it, the 29th, and go and see Helen as well.